given one day to live, what would you do with your day?
I would want to connect with the most important people to me, like my mom and my really good friends. And I'd want to do something I've never done before, something that was like really exciting. I don't know, like maybe skydiving or like bungee jumping or something thrilling. I'd want to be close with someone, like physically. Just to have that closeness one last time. And maybe do things that I would have been afraid to do, like perform at an open mic night or something like that. Yeah.
Were you ever bullied? And if you were, what was something that someone said to you that still sticks with you?
Oof. Yes, I was. And I also think that everyone who's been bullied has probably been a bully as well. But yes, I have been bullied in elementary school. It was the person that provided daycare for me after school and before school. It was her daughter. Most of the time, you don't, like I'm thinking of a Maya Angelou quote, where like it's not really, you don't really remember particular things that people have said to you, but you remember how they made you feel. And so I don't know if there was any one thing in particular that she said to me. I think it was just an overall feeling of like inferiority. I was also always the student that was asking questions in class and raising my hand and like wanting to clarify things, and a lot of people found that annoying. And so I remember I was like perceived kind of as this like keener in class. But I also didn't really care at that time. I think it was mostly elementary school where it really affected me. Yeah, I don't know if it's any one thing in particular that's been said to me. I think it's just like an overall feeling.
And does that feeling come up for you now?
Yes. I think again, just feeling like people are annoyed with me or people don't like me right off the bat. Like I always assume that people think the worst of me instead of thinking that people think the best of me. And so I'm kind of always alert and on the lookout for signs of that, and like hyper aware of like, oh, you're being too loud. That person looked a certain way at you and now they hate you, type of thing. Yeah, so it's definitely, I think it's followed me. I was thinking about that the other day, about like one of my core beliefs, and if that's one of them, that like just assuming that people don't appreciate me or like me that much or are annoyed by me because I'm too much. That's like the core belief, I'm too much for people. Yeah.
What was your greatest heartbreak?
Oh! They all feel so real when it's happening. Like the rejection and the self-worth stuff comes into play. It's hard to pinpoint one that's the biggest. I think, if I'm being honest, it was probably the first time that I realized like that I wanted to end up with a woman. I always knew that I was attracted to women and appreciated them and admired them, but I think it was the first time that I like met one that I was like, oh, and it just really shifted my entire perspective of like what my life was going to be. And she wasn't available. She was like still kind of caught up with her ex, which is typical lesbian culture. I had projected these expectations and hopes and got really excited she wasn't my person and I wasn't her person, but she was so lovely, and it was like the most like grounding type feeling when I was around her, but also really exciting. And yeah, that was a big heartbreak, because I was just like, oof, I feel like anyone who's gay, I think their first gay lover, relationship, crush is the worst. Maybe not the worst, that's like a negative connotation, but the hardest. Yeah.
What is the lie that you tell yourself most often?
Oh. I think a lie I tell myself a lot is that things never work out for me, when actually things are working out for me. And like almost seeing things sometimes through like a victim lens instead of like an empowered lens, and knowing that things are actually working exactly as they're supposed to, and you know that it's not necessarily anything to do with me. It's circumstances, it's timing, it's place, it's so many factors. And I take things personally so much, and it doesn't have anything to do with me a lot of the time. And I think part of that is because I'm an only child, so like I grew up with everything being focused on me, but it's not all about me. And that sounds really selfish, and I hate to think of myself as selfish. I don't know, I'm also very sensitive, so I just feel like it's part of who I am, that I internalize a lot of things, but doesn't have to do with me all the time, and it's all working out how it is supposed to. One other thing I want to add about like the lying about like how nothing's working out, I think it's like a protective thing, and I don't quite know how, but I wanted to add that in there, that I think it's like a way of protecting myself, or like bracing myself for things. If things are going well, it's like, no, it's not going to work out because it never works out type of thing, or it's not going to work out in the best interest for me. And it's a way to kind of like brace myself instead of like being vulnerable and like sitting with uncomfortability. Yeah, I wanted to add that.
If you could change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be?
It's a hard question to answer, because I feel like then I wouldn't be the same person if I were to change something. So it's hard to kind of like imagine what I would change, because whatever I change would make me very different than who I am right now. So it's hard to envision. I guess I would change all of the men growing up in my life. My dad, my uncle, my stepdad really struggle, continuing to this day, struggle to show emotion, be vulnerable, open up, talk about things that are hard. And I would have changed that, because I think it's impacted how I relate to men. And I think everyone has dad issues, especially girls, and mom issues, but like so many people I know have dad issues. And I think it does have to do with the society that we live in and how men are raised and how men are socialized. But I would have liked the men in my life to have been more, to have shown more vulnerability and to have opened up more. And I think I would have felt a lot more safe if they had, because I didn't really feel safe to open up to any of the men in my life. Like I really only felt safe with my mom and, you know, other women in my family. But even saying I love you to some of them is like hard for me and hard for them. There's like a block almost. So I think I would have changed that. And I would have liked my dad to have tried maybe harder or looked into ways to be a better parent for me, because he really I didn't feel him really put in the effort a lot. I would go over to his house and, you know, he lived in a condo complex with like no other kids, so there was like no one for me to play with. We watched a lot of TV, a lot of movies, which also I think impacted how I moved through life. Like I kind of moved through life with this like movie lens type thing sometimes. I think sometimes that has to do with the fact that I'm a Pisces and we're very like idealistic and get bored with like banal everyday life things. But yeah, I would say the men thing and my dad being able to like just put in more effort, have food in the fridge, like do things with me on the weekend besides going to the movie theater. Yeah.
What was the hardest decision you've ever had to make, and do you have any regrets around it?
I think the hardest decision that I've had to make is moving away from everything that I knew in Kelowna, moving out of my parents' place, moving out of that comfort and into something completely unknown where I really didn't know anybody, like moving to Vancouver and doing it by myself. I didn't move with a friend. I didn't, you know, I did it by myself with help, but I think that was a really hard decision because it was one of those things where it was going to change like the course of my next 5 to 10 years of my life. And I knew that. There was almost like a knowing that it was the right decision, but it still was hard and scary. And I think there was many times where I was crying and like wondering, what the fuck did I just do? Did I make the right choice? Like, why did I do this? I feel like it was the right decision. It was a hard decision, but it was the right thing to do. And no, I would not, I don't regret it at all. I think it showed me a lot. It showed me that for the longest time growing up, I was like, I'll never be able to move out. I'll always have to live at home because of my crippling anxiety and depression and mental health stuff. And the only person that ever really like held my hand through that was my mom. And so I was just like, I can't live where she's not. Like, what if I have a nervous breakdown? What if I have a panic attack and then I can't, and then that sends me into a depressive episode, and then I can't work, and then I can't afford my rent, and then I get kicked out, and then I'm living on the streets. Like, these are the thoughts that I was having about moving out and like being away from safety and comfort. But doing it has showed me that like I'm way more capable than I ever thought I could be, and like I'm doing it. And that's really cool because it's like literally one thing I thought I would never be able to do, and I'm doing it and have been doing it for the past 3 more years, and things are good.
What's the hardest thing you've ever been through, and how'd you get through it?
The hardest thing I've ever been through is my depressive episodes that I've had many of throughout my life. Yeah. I don't really know how I got through them because they were really hard. I think medication has helped. Having a really good support system has helped. I've always had really good support systems. Like, I'm really privileged and lucky that way. And I remember this one time I was like kind of coming out of one, which is, it feels euphoric when you're kind of coming out. It feels both euphoric and also very neutral and it's a mixture of things, because you're just like, it's like a big relief that you feel like you're coming up, but there's also this like absolute gut-wrenching like fear that like you can't get too excited because it could just like go down again. So you're really like cautiously euphoric. And I remember thinking to myself, I should make a list of things to like live for, because there's like so many things. I was like, one of them was, this is so stupid, but one of them was like this like movie that brought me so much joy, and I just loved this movie so much. And so I put it on my list. I was like, what if I never see this movie again? If I unalive myself? And one of them was like music, and one of them was really good food, and laughing so hard that I pee my pants and I like can't stop and my face starts to hurt. Like those were some of the things on the list. And also one of the things on the list was like falling in love and like being in like a really lovely, safe, comforting relationship with someone. Because I was like, what if I miss that? So yeah, I think my major depressive episodes were the hardest for me to overcome. And yeah, and I did it. Yeah.
Yay!
Yay! Yay!